Returning from my weightlifting session, feeling every muscle in my body complaining from the effort, I opened the door to my apartment. I expected to be greeted by the calm of my own space. However, something was wrong. An unfamiliar, strong, and unpleasant smell invaded my nostrils, causing me to frown in displeasure. This odor didn't belong here. With a mix of curiosity and an anxiety I didn't want to admit, I began to search the apartment for the source, unaware that I was about to stumble upon something that would turn my world upside down. Following the trail of the odor, my search led me to my brother Carter's room. What I saw there made my heart stop. Carter, lifeless, with signs of violence, lay on the floor. A scream stuck in my throat. A mixture of horror, sadness, and disbelief engulfed me. My legs gave way, and I leaned against the nearest wall to avoid collapsing. How did this happen? Who would do something like this to Carter? The reality of this situation was relentless, and I knew my life would never be the same. While still processing the scene before me, I was startled when the front door opened. Two men entered, one large and intimidating, known as Rock, and the other, more agile with a penetrating gaze, Steel. Without hesitation, they got straight to the point. Carter owed them a substantial sum of $600,500. With a chilling coldness that froze my blood, they made it clear that the debt was now my responsibility. The tension was palpable, and they were not there to play games. Dealing with this situation, a mix of fear and determination invaded me. Rock and Steel wasted no time, foreseeing the consequences if I failed to settle the debt. The threat was clear. My life and that of my family were in danger if I didn't fulfill the obligation. Desperation took hold of me. The feeling of being trapped in a no-win situation was terrible. I was not the one who had incurred that debt. As they spoke, each word felt like a blow, reinforcing the gravity of my dilemma. The reality that I needed to find a way to pay $600,500, an astronomical amount, left me with an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Faced with what was said by Rock and Steel, the reality of the debt legacy left by Carter became an overwhelming burden. The financial obligation, now transferred to me, was a weight I had never imagined carrying. As I struggled to process the entire situation, the implications of this debt began to unfold in a dark manner before my eyes. The need to find a solution, any solution, became my sole obsession. The debt was not just a number. It was a real threat to my existence and the safety of my family. In the midst of this tense situation, Rock advanced, his imposing posture and relentless gaze conveying, "Listen carefully." His low voice carried a sinister promise. "You have 1 month, not a day more." His heavy hand rested on my shoulder, a grip that communicated more than words. Now fear took over me. Rock wasn't joking. The seriousness of his intentions was crystal clear. Each of his words was like a verdict, highlighting the real and imminent danger that my family and I were facing. With no way to defend myself, the blow came fast and relentless. Steel, moving with surprising agility, struck me in the stomach, forcing the air out of my lungs. The pain was sharp, and as I doubled over, trying to catch my breath, the reality of the violence they were willing to employ to ensure their payment became frighteningly clear. I was in a dangerous situation, and the pain from the blow was just the beginning of what would come if I failed to meet their demands. After the strike, as I was still recovering, Rock locked his eyes onto mine, ensuring that the message was unmistakably received. "You have 1 month," with a tone that brooked no argument. The simplicity and finality of the statement weighed on me like a death sentence. With a 1-month deadline, the pressure to come up with such a large sum of money seemed impossible. The threat of violence loomed over my head, an unrelenting countdown to a fate I desperately wanted to avoid. In that tense atmosphere, Rock seized the moment of weakness to raise the stakes. "Don't think we'll stop at you," his low voice tinged with a veiled threat. "Your family will pay the price too if you don't comply." The words fell on me like stones, the fear for those I love blending with the desperation of my situation. The threat to my family made the situation unbearably real, further intensifying my anguish. It was either pay up or jeopardize those I cared about the most. After Rock and Steel left, I was engulfed by overwhelming loneliness. Sitting in the silence of my apartment, the reality of what was at stake began to settle in deeply. With the threat hanging over me and my family, the weight of responsibility isolated me even more. This moment of despair was not only physical but emotional, marking a turning point where I had to confront my vulnerability and the harsh reality of my limited options. With the 1-month deadline looming over me, every moment was consumed by the need to make a decision. The pressure was immense, unbearable. My options were limited and risky, ranging from the legal to the morally questionable. The need to protect my family from the threat of Rock and Steel weighed on every thought, forcing me to consider paths I never would have imagined taking before. This moment of indecision reflected not only the urgency of my situation, but also the internal conflict between what was right and what was necessary. Reflecting on the past few weeks, I couldn't help but feel like a coward. I had avoided facing the truth, naively hoping for a miracle to solve my problems. But in that moment, confronted by darkness both around me and within myself, I knew it was time to face reality with courage, regardless of the consequences. The loss of Carter, the threat to my family, the debt, everything became unbearably real. I was awake, finally, to the gravity of my situation. With the weight of the debt on my shoulders and the 1-month deadline looming, I plunged into a frantic search for solutions. Each passing day was a reminder of the dwindling time, and viable options seemed increasingly scarce. I explored every possibility, from borrowing money from friends and family to selling personal belongings, but the required amount always seemed out of reach. The pressure was constant, just the thought of Rock and Steel, forcing me to confront the reality that conventional solutions might not be sufficient. Venturing into the dark web, I found myself navigating through unfamiliar and dangerous situations. I sought any solution that could alleviate the pressure of the relentless debt. In this shadowy world, the options were as varied as they were questionable, ranging from get-rich-quick schemes to illegal activities promising immediate financial returns. Every click took me deeper into the realm of dubious morality, where the lines between right and wrong blurred. It was a desperate search for an exit, an act of someone who saw no other options. As I explored options on the dark web, the conflict between my morality and the need to resolve the debt became increasingly acute. However, with each illegal or morally questionable possibility I considered, an internal struggle intensified. I questioned how far I was willing to go, not only challenging my integrity but also the person I would become after making such decisions. Faced with the relentless pressure of debt and the deadline rapidly approaching, I found myself considering options I had never imagined before. The idea emerged almost by chance during a night of frantic internet research on ways to quickly raise money. Among the various possibilities, one stood out: becoming a male escort. At first, the idea seemed absurd, but the more I thought about it, the more viable it became. It was an undoubtedly unconventional path, but the desperate situation called for extreme measures. With a mix of determination, I decided to embark on this new venture, hoping it could be the solution to my financial crisis. My first experience as a male escort was a complete surprise. The client was someone entirely unexpected, elegant, polite, and surprisingly more interested in my company for social events than anything else. The night unfolded between deep conversations and laughter, revealing the potential of a new path not only as a financial solution but also as a way of personal and human discovery. This encounter opened my eyes to the possibilities and complexities of the job, leaving me curious about what else was to come. As I delved deeper into my new occupation, each client brought with them a unique set of experiences, emotional challenges, and ethical dilemmas. I encountered a range of personalities, from those seeking only companionship or someone to talk to those with expectations that tested my personal and professional boundaries. However, an unexpected invitation to an exclusive costume party marked this new reality for me forever. My preparation involved a meticulous search for the perfect costume that not only fit the theme but also allowed me to maintain a certain level of anonymity. Upon arriving at the party, I was met with a world of extravagance and mystery, where masks concealed more than just faces, suggesting a night full of potential dangers and strange discoveries. It was an environment of rich and extravagant people with plenty of drinks and drugs, a cultural shock for me. Observing closely, I realized that the world of the wealthy was filled with peculiar tastes and extravagances that I had never imagined. Each interaction revealed more about their unique and sometimes bizarre desires, challenging my understanding of what motivated their choices. The hostess of the party was named Ava, and she made me feel quite comfortable. Wherever she went, there were security guards surrounding her, which made me a bit uneasy. I quickly made it clear to her that my services were intended for one person only. Upon hearing this, she turned to me and reassured me to relax and enjoy, assuring that everything would go as agreed. As time passed, I found myself accompanying Ava and her guests in an atmosphere filled with plenty of drinks and drugs. Suddenly, Ava told me to have a drink, and I declined. After my refusal, she told me that I would have to participate in the situation if I wanted to be paid at the end of the night. Reluctantly, I accepted the drink Ava offered me. I had no idea that I was opening the door to a series of horrifying events that would unfold. What seemed like a simple courtesy concealed a substance capable of completely altering my perception, dragging me into an inescapable nightmare. This moment, which I believed to be a gesture of relaxation, turned into the trigger for terrifying discoveries and consequences I could never have predicted. Shortly after drinking the beverage Ava offered me, I felt an overwhelming wave of dizziness. My world began to spin, and every attempt to maintain focus proved futile. The feeling of disorientation was immediate, engulfing me in a darkness that seemed alive, pulsating. I struggled to stay conscious, but it was like trying to grasp air. The mysterious substance rendered me unconscious, leaving me at the mercy of a nightmare I had yet to realize had begun. Upon waking up, chaos immediately took hold of me. I opened my eyes to a scene of absolute horror, bodies around me, signs of extreme violence, mutilated individuals. It seemed like I was in a war zone. The confusion was as overwhelming as the terror. My heart pounded in despair as I tried to piece together how I had come to this nightmare moment. The sensation of blood on my hands and the echo of silenced screams in my mind made it clear that something terribly wrong had happened during my unconsciousness. As I approached the mutilated bodies, the reality of the crimes committed revealed itself in their brutality. The sight of the bodies, disfigured beyond recognition, was a nightmarish scene that challenged reality. My stomach churned with the cruelty exposed before me, each detail etching itself into my mind as a permanent reminder of the horror that had been unleashed. I felt a mixture of nausea, fear, and disbelief, struggling to comprehend how such horrors could occur, and furthermore, how I could be connected to them. It was a moment of profound desolation, facing the reality of violence so extreme that it seemed to surpass the bounds of human understanding. With no understanding of what had transpired amid that horrible scene, filled with mutilated bodies and ample blood, I walked through the house in search of anyone alive, and when I least expected it, I heard a voice saying, "You made it, you're alive." And when I looked back, I saw Ava with her 2 bodyguards. In that exact moment, not understanding anything that was happening, I confronted her abruptly. "What did you do to me? What was in that drink you gave me? I'm calling the police." Even in the face of all my anger and frustration, Ava simply smiled and said, "You did very well. Congratulations." As for the police, I wouldn't call them if I were you. Without giving any explanation, she continued, "Go clean up upstairs. There's a bathroom, and my security will accompany you. Your payment will be there in the bathroom." Confused about what was happening and what had happened, and considering the threat I had received from Ava herself, I thought it was best to follow her suggestion. I better clean up and get the money. Luckily, she paid me somewhat decently considering everything. However, I kept thinking about everything I had been through and the warning Ava gave me, that it wouldn't be in my best interest to involve the police. I kept thinking it wasn't possible that I had done all that. I didn't even know how to fight. I was totally calm and passive in everyday situations. In the end, I had too many questions and too few answers, so I cleaned up, grabbed the money, started the car, and left. While driving, my phone rang. It was Rock warning me that the deadline for payment was running out. He told me if I had raised at least half of the money, and I said I had all the money and that he should come pick it up. Upon hearing this, he laughed and said, "I knew you'd manage it. I didn't want to kill you, just like I did with your brother." After saying that, he gave me the address of a warehouse to deliver the money. It was a rainy night, and I had an absurdly hard time getting out of the car with that envelope. Imagine soaking all that cash. Rock would kill me. So, I knocked on the warehouse door, and soon it opened with a creaking sound, and it was Steele who opened it. He told me, "Come in, they're already waiting for you." But before I reached where everyone was gathered, a large and strong man named Dawson began to frisk me. As Dawson carefully searched me, I realized he was looking for something, perhaps a revolver or a weapon, I suppose, or maybe a knife. However, the only thing he found in my pocket was a simple bottle, which caught his attention. He asked, "Is this a drink to celebrate?" I replied that I had just come from a party and that indeed I was in a celebratory mood. After this response, he returned the bottle to me without caring about its contents. After passing Dawson's search, I arrived at the warehouse. The atmosphere, filled with anticipation, was palpable. Rock and his men awaited me, their gazes fixed on me. The sensation of being under constant surveillance was suffocating, every move of mine closely monitored. The warehouse, a labyrinth of shadows and echoes, seemed alive with the tension of what was to come, a silent and intimidating place. There, everyone was gathered, Rock, Steele, the newly acquainted Dawson, and 4 more bodyguards. At that moment, Rock asked me, "Do you have the money?" And I replied yes. He said, "Very well, great to know." And at that moment, I handed the envelope with the money to Steele. While Steele opened the envelope to count the money, I took out the bottle I had brought from my pocket, and at that moment, Rock noticed and said, "A drink? A beverage at this hour?" I replied that I had just come from a party and wanted to continue celebrating. After all, managing to get the money was a good reason to rejoice. At the same moment I took the bottle, Steele was counting the money in the envelope and realized that some amount was missing. In that moment, I took a sip from the bottle, and the liquid, with a sensation of cold, flowed through my body. After drinking the mysterious substance, A boiling rage took over me, triggering a frenzied fight. Each of my movements was fueled by a strength I didn't know I possessed, an unwavering will to resist and overcome the shadows threatening to engulf my existence. The fight for life unfolded with raw and desperate violence. Confronted by Dawson, every exchanged blow was a battle not only against him but against a fate that seemed sealed. Facing Rock, now armed and emanating danger, the final confrontation was set, charged with tension and promises of an explosive climax. I quickly leaped onto Dawson, who retaliated by punching me. At the same time, an armed and desperate Rock began shooting, hitting some of his own bodyguards and accidentally hitting Steele. No one expected my unpredictable reaction, leading to Rock's panic. While Rock fired wildly with surprising fear, I lay on the ground from the blow I received from Dawson. For a moment, I was stunned, and then I blacked out. It seemed to take longer to black out than when I drank the drink at the party. Eventually, I passed out, just like at the party. When I regained consciousness, I saw Dawson on the ground, covered in blood with a puncture wound on his face, appearing as if stabbed. I also looked to the other side and saw Rock crawling, all injured with a broken leg and a gunshot wound to the chest, pleading for mercy. Surveying the entire scene, I knew that, just like at the party, I had done this. I started to look at the blood-soaked ground, searching for the money notes that had spilled from the envelope. I began to collect the notes and put them back into the envelope. Looking again to the side, I saw that Rock had already died. The warehouse was a mess. As I walked inside the warehouse and then out of it, I couldn't help but think about how easily I acquired more of that drink in the bottle and how the guard from Ava's mansion was easy to bribe. I just had to give him a slice of the money I got there to secure more of that drink, something very easy to obtain. Exiting the warehouse, the rain was pouring heavily, washing away all the blood that had covered me and my clothes. Before getting into the car, I was already somewhat clean. I was cleaned up, feeling a bit uneasy about what I had done at the party, but quite satisfied to have rid myself of the henchmen who were threatening me and to have avenged my brother's death. With money in my pocket, I got into the car, started it, and drove away. Only the empty road and the rainy night offered me solace.